Today, we're going to talk about how to write slow burn romance using burn scenes, bid scenes, and sucker punch scenes. Hi, I'm Jane Kalmus, and when it comes to writing slow burn romance, I've got one guiding principle that governs everything. Keep it slow, but let it burn. And burn is going to be the word we'll use to describe the relationship between our characters changing. Sometimes progressing and pulling the characters closer together, but sometimes faltering and forcing them farther apart. In most of the scenes we are writing for our love story, we want to see a change in the relationship, but just a tiny one, a nudge that lets our audience's hopes for the relationships be ever so slightly raised or lowered. So let's look at a scene from Downton Abbey that gives our first set of lovebirds a tiny little burn. Mary is the daughter of a wealthy earl, and Matthew is a distant cousin who has unexpectedly become her father's heir due to the death of a relative and the British law that requires him to have a male heir. So Mary could inherit if she marries Matthew, but she's not keen on that. At one of their first dinners together, Mary tells the gathered family the myth of Princess Andromeda, who was sacrificed to a sea monster to protect her father's interests.
But the sea monster didn't get her, did he?
No. Just when it seemed he was the only solution to her father's problems, she was rescued.
By Perseus.
That's right. Perseus, son of a god. Rather more fitting, wouldn't you say?
That depends. I'd have to know more about the princess and the sea monster in question.
This kind of scene is what I call a burn scene because it changes the relationship. But you'll notice that it didn't actually change things very much at all. The only thing that has happened is that Matthew has indicated that he's not put off by Mary's initial disdain. There's still an ocean of territory for them to cross before they would actually resolve this relationship. But still, this small burn is enough to make us feel that electric sizzle of anticipation. It's enough to move our hopes for their future from here to here. This kind of minute change is what we're looking to write through most of our love story. The other thing this scene has illustrated is a principle we're going to refer to with the acronym KISS, KISS. You've probably heard this acronym used before to mean keep it simple, stupid. When it comes to romance, we're going to say keep it subtextual, sweetie, because I'm not going to call you stupid. That is not our thing. I've been wanting to use that acronym for a long time. Mary and Matthew didn't come right out and say what they meant. They used subtext, which literally means that their meaning was communicated below their spoken words. Subtext gives the reader a fun little puzzle to solve, and sometimes it lets the characters keep their intentions secret from a third party. But perhaps the best thing about subtext is that it lets your characters say things they otherwise couldn't. Perhaps because they're not brave enough, or perhaps because propriety constrains them. Mary can't really hand Matthew an outright insult at dinner, but she can make herself understood. So when you want to write subtext, the easiest way to do this is simply to write down exactly what the characters would say to one another if they held nothing back, and then try to figure out a way for them to get those points across subtextually. Mary wants to say, "You're beneath me." Well, perhaps she could give Matthew a left-handed compliment. She's impressed that he's behaving himself so well, almost like a real gentleman. Maybe she could use a metaphor to get her point across, and that's our sea monster story. Or she might communicate without using words at all, say by failing to pay attention when he's trying to talk to her. And then what we need to do is devise a subtextual way for Matthew to respond. And he's probably going to respond in the same way that she did, lobbing that exact same subtextual tactic back at Mary. So if she's pierced him with a barbed compliment, well, he'll probably respond with some witty wordplay of his own. If she's used a metaphor, he'll extend it, as he did in the scene that we just watched. And if she used a gesture, it's likely his response will also be a gesture. Perhaps he'll place his hand briefly on hers to indicate that talking to her is very important to him. All right, let's talk about pacing. How slow do you really want your burn to happen? Well, my policy here is bid, burn. Let me explain that one. Bid for affection is a term coined by marriage psychologist John Gottman, and it refers to all those little requests we make for our partner to connect with us and firm up our relationship. Honey, do I look nice in this dress? Do you want to walk the dog with me? Tell me about your day. And the health of a marriage can often be determined by how good the partners are at noticing and responding positively to their partner's bid. So here's a scene where Matthew makes a bid for attention.
If you really like an argument,
Yes?
we should see more of each other.
And Mary responds in a fairly neutral way. This scene keeps the romance uppermost in the audience's mind. It gives us a little zing, but it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't raise or lower our hopes. So this is what I call a bid scene, and my policy is no more than 2 bids in a row. Once I've written 2, it's absolutely time for a burn. Okay, why would you even want to include bid scenes in your love story? They don't seem to do much. Well, they can add some spice to scenes that are primarily about the plot. For example, I recently read The Bombay Prince by Sujata Massey, in which our sleuth, an Indian woman named Praveen, is starting to fall for Englishman Colin Sandringham. She's trying to keep him at arm's length, though, because she knows her family wouldn't approve. When he brings her a clue connected to the mystery she's trying to solve, her father considers this a gentlemanly action and invites Colin to stay for breakfast. Colin wants to, but Praveen waves him off because she doesn't want her father to see them sharing an intimate meal and start to perceive the connection between them. So, Colin has made a bid for attention. Can I stay for breakfast? And Praveen has responded in a fairly neutral way. Not positive, but not overly negative either, so there's no burn. But it's added a tremendous amount of delicious tension to a scene that was primarily about getting Praveen the next clue and moving the mystery forward. If you're enjoying this video and you feel like it's giving you some useful tips, I would so appreciate it if you would take a second to just smash that like button. It means a great deal to me when I can see my channel growing and know that I am reaching more writers. And then let's talk about my next tip for slow burn, which is to get used to rolling obstacles. Okay, an obstacle is anything that is keeping your characters apart. You can be really inventive in coming up with obstacles, but there are a few that are particularly popular in fiction, and Downton is going to let us take a look at all of them. Okay, the initial obstacle standing between Mary and Matthew is pride. Pride is also the main obstacle in stories like Gone with the Wind and Pride and Prejudice. But for a long-running series, you can't really stick with pride or any obstacle really for too long. It just gets old and we begin to become impatient with the characters for not getting past that obstacle already and moving the relationship forward. So that's what rolling obstacles are for. As soon as one obstacle gets resolved, we introduce another. That's what happens in this episode. Mary and Matthew have a lovely time at another dinner, and we can see that she has begun to recognize Matthew's worth. So her pride is no longer an obstacle to their happiness. Then she gets into an argument with her sister Edith and decides to prove that she can have any man she wants, even Sir Anthony, who Edith has set her sights on. When the men join the ladies, Mary showers Sir Anthony with attention, and Matthew gets the impression that the interest she displayed in him earlier was only skin deep. This is another burn scene. It doesn't move the relationship forward, but it changes it. It moves it backward, actually, and often this change can be just as thrilling for the reader as forward progress. A scene like this dashes your reader's hopes. It hurts us, and oddly enough, we like it. This scene between Matthew and Mary also illustrates our second popular obstacle: misunderstandings, secrets, and lies. I group these together because, well, they blend into one another a little bit, and because these are the obstacles that often make one lover feel betrayed by the other. Another popular obstacle is forbidden love, and that's what's experienced by Mary's sister Sybil and the chauffeur Branson. The social gap between these two is much larger than that between Mary and Matthew, and so their love is contrary to everyone's expectations for them. There's also alternate love interests, which Mary and Matthew deal with in season 2. Alternate love interests can either provide an appealing prospect to one of the partners, something that's going to tempt them away from our slow burn relationship, or they can provide a threat that one of the partners has to escape, as in Mary's relationship with Sir Richard Carlisle, or the movies Moulin Rouge and The Princess Bride. And then there's opposing team complications, where the characters feel, rightly or wrongly, that their interests are not aligned with one another. That's what Matthew and Mary experience in season 3, when Mary realizes that the family estate is in danger of being sold and Matthew has the money to save it, only he won't because he inherited the money from someone he betrayed and he feels it would be wrong to keep it. And this plotline brings up another point that I want to make. It is never too late to introduce an obstacle to your slow burn romance. Okay, Matthew and Mary are already engaged at this point. They're getting married the next day. But that means absolutely nothing because there is no happily ever after until the very last book in your series is written. Even Mary's parents, the long-married Earl and Countess of Grantham, managed to weather a few obstacles over the course of the series. Characters can be 100% married, 100% committed, but still get hit by an obstacle that pulls them apart romantically, if perhaps not legally. Anytime your characters' love lives start looking too good, it's time to stick a big obstacle in their way. The thing I may love best about slow burn romance is that it sets the audience up for a sucker punch. In a sucker punch scene, There's no more subtext. People say what they mean. They do what they want.
Don't play with me. I don't deserve it. Not from you.
In a sucker punch scene, all the tension your audience has been feeling, all those little burns and bids that you've been forcing them to endure, all that is finally going to get paid off. It's going to result in a much bigger burn, a larger change in the relationship, as in this scene where Matthew proposes at last. This video has been largely about the mechanics of writing slow burn love, but there's another big piece of the puzzle, and that's creating the right characters to begin your love story in the first place. So I made a video addressing this a while back where we talk a little bit more about obstacles, and we also talk about how to design characters who both have something important to gain from the relationship. That video talks about love stories in the context of mystery novels, but whatever genre you're working in, the principles of designing your lovebirds will stay the same, so that might be a great thing to check out next.